For the best experience, remember to like, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of our historical deep dives. Now let's journey back to a pivotal moment in English history and unravel the early life and tumultuous rise of Anne Boleyn, a woman whose story remains as captivating as it is tragic. Born around 1501, the exact date is debated among historians, but this is the most commonly accepted year. Anne Boleyn was the daughter of Sir Thomas Boleyn, an ambitious diplomat, and Lady Elizabeth Howard, a member of the powerful Howard family. From an early age, Anne's destiny was intertwined with the courts of Europe, largely due to her father's strategic placements. Her formative years were spent not in the quiet English countryside, but amidst the vibrant, sophisticated, and often scandalous atmosphere of the Low Countries in France. In 1513, at the tender age of 12, Anne was sent to the court of Margaret of Austria, Duchess of Savoy and Regent of the Netherlands. This was a crucial period for Anne's intellectual development. Margaret, a highly educated and cultured woman, ran a court renowned for its intellectual pursuits and refinement. Anne received an excellent education there, learning to read and write in French, perfect her needlework, and cultivate an appreciation for music and poetry. This exposure to a continental court, so different from the more insular English one, undoubtedly shaped her independent spirit and sharp wit. However, her time with Margaret was relatively brief. In 1514, Anne's sister Mary Boleyn became a lady-in-waiting to Mary Tudor, King Henry VIII's younger sister, who was set to marry King Louis XII of France, and, likely around the age of 13, accompanied them. When Louis XII died just a few months later in January 1515, and Mary Tudor returned to England and remained in France. This decision, orchestrated by her shrewd father, proved to be a pivotal moment. For the next 7 years, Anne served in the French court, first as a maid of honor to Queen Claude, wife of Francis I, and later to Marguerite of Angoulême, Francis I's intellectual and influential sister. The French court of Francis I was a crucible of Renaissance culture, known for its lavish entertainments, intellectual debates, and a more open approach to courtly love and flirtation than was common in England. Anne thrived in this environment. She perfected her French, became adept at courtly games, learned to dance with grace, and developed a keen fashion sense. She was praised for her elegance, her dark, captivating eyes, and her quick intelligence, though she was not considered conventionally beautiful by the standards of the time. This period in France imbued her with a self-assurance and sophistication that would set her apart when she eventually returned to England. By 1521 or 1522, Anne was recalled to England, likely by her father, who was actively seeking advantageous marriages for his children. It's speculated that she was intended for her cousin James Butler as part of a land dispute settlement, but this never materialized. Instead, she entered the service of Queen Catherine of Aragon, Henry VIII's first wife, as a maid of honor. Her arrival at the English court brought a fresh, continental flair. She was lively, witty, and confident, a stark contrast to many of the more demure English ladies. While initially one among many, her charm and intelligence soon caught the attention of the king. King Henry VIII, at this point in his reign, was a man in his early 30s, a Renaissance prince in his own right, known for his athleticism, intellect, and increasingly his desire for a male heir. He had been married to Catherine of Aragon for over a decade, and despite several pregnancies, only one child, Princess Mary, had survived. This lack of a male heir was a source of growing anxiety for Henry, who feared for the succession and the stability of his dynasty. Initially, Anne was not the subject of Henry's romantic affections. Her sister Mary Boleyn had famously been one of Henry's mistresses. However, sometime around 1526, Henry's gaze shifted to Anne. The exact circumstances of their initial interactions are debated, but it's clear that Anne, unlike her sister, resisted Henry's advances for a considerable period. This refusal, perhaps more than anything, captivated the king. And, having observed the fleeting nature of courtly affairs in France, was determined not to be simply another royal mistress. She understood the power of denying the king, demanding more than a transient liaison. Their courtship was prolonged and intense. Henry began sending passionate love letters, many of which survive to this day, revealing the depth of his infatuation. In these letters, he pleaded for her affection, expressing his devotion and promising to make her his queen. And for her part maintained her stance, insisting on marriage as the only condition for her surrender. She knew that accepting a role as mere mistress would offer her no security or lasting influence. This strategic resistance, combined with Henry's desperate need for a legitimate male heir and his growing conviction that his marriage to Catherine was unlawful in God's eyes, based on a passage in Leviticus regarding marrying one's brother's wife, set in motion a chain of events that would forever alter the course of English history. The king's great matter, his annulment from Catherine and his desire to marry and consumed the court and led directly to the break with the Roman Catholic Church. By 1532, it was clear that the Pope would not grant Henry his annulment. In a defiant move, Henry and Anne traveled to Calais together, where they were publicly acknowledged as a couple. On January 25, 1533, likely already pregnant, and secretly married Henry VIII. This clandestine ceremony took place before the annulment from Catherine was formally recognized in England, marking a radical departure from traditional religious authority. On May 23, 1533, Thomas Cranmer, the newly appointed Archbishop of Canterbury, declared Henry's marriage to Catherine null and void. Just 5 days later, on May 28, 1533, he validated Henry's marriage to Anne. The culmination of Anne's journey from a young lady in European courts to the Queen of England was celebrated with her lavish coronation on June 1, 1533, at Westminster Abbey. And Boleyn's rise was unprecedented. Her intelligence, ambition, and strategic use of her influence had propelled her to the highest position in the land. However, the same fierce independence and the circumstances of her ascent would ultimately contribute to her downfall. But that, my friends, is a story for another time.